Hello and welcome to Coffee and Chat with me, Hannah Grice, clinical animal behaviourist trainer and animal sciences lecturer. In this Coffee and Chat, I'm bringing some animal-related discussion with a leading professional from another industry. It's interior designer Rebecca McCloskey. She's an interior designer and founder of the interior design company Weave Interiors. Rebecca has worked on many homes in and around the Hertsbeds, Buckinghamshire counties, as well as further afield, including Brighton, the Cotswolds, and even France. And she works across a range of different size projects, whether it's a single room to a full home redesign, depending on the needs of the client. And that's one of the reasons why I asked Rebecca to join me for this coffee and chat, because she's an awesome interior designer and she also puts clients and the way they live at the heart of her design. So thank you so much for coming to speak to me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks for that introduction. That was very kind.
Well, one of the things that I was really interested is that you've been quoted as saying that you believe our home should be a sanctuary and where we love to be, and that a good design brings immense health and well-being benefits. So I know you're an animal lover, and I know you recently became a puppy parent. So what are the key considerations that you keep in mind when designing a home, whether it's for yourself, whether it's for a client, and they want it to be stylish, but also functional for their animals?
It comes across, so it's essentially three approaches, and often it's a mix that gets the right balance. So first of all, it's adapting what you have. So when you're welcoming a new pet into your home, you need to make sure that everything is suitable, and then buying wisely once you have a pet, and then potentially building or buying specifically for them once they are a part of your lives.
Yeah, I guess it's a bit like kids, isn't it? Because you buy that lovely expensive sofa and then it's trashed with baby milk and God knows what, isn't it? So yeah, so how do you balance then kind of the Instagrammable type aesthetics that we all desire to have, depending on our budgets? So how do we balance that seamlessly with pet bowls and pet toys and all the kind of stuff that comes with our animals, like bedding and whatnot?
So thinking about, as you would with any other scheme when you're sorting it out in a room, thinking through your own colour scheme and thinking through the different textures, the different patterns, but also the practicality and the durability. So you are still going to potentially want that lovely sofa, you're still going to want cushions, you're still going to want rugs, but how can you make that much more practical and the right decision for your pet? So making sure that things are durable, washable. So for example, we'll talk on carpets and rugs in a little bit, but in terms of sort of sofa fabrics and things like that, there are lots of different places where you can get removable sofa covers. IKEA do them, sofa.com, Bems are a company that do covers for IKEA sofas and make them look less IKEA-like. And those sorts of companies where you can remove the covers, wash them, but then also thinking about, as you would with any other scheme, the sorts of colours that you want to bring into your home. So you want areas that are warm and welcoming for your pets. That will help discourage them from sitting on the favourite spot of your sofa and molting or scratching. So having a blanket that is durable and washable, but also in a colour and a texture that you want it to be. So Lords and Labradors, for example, have some really nice pet blankets, and just choosing wisely and making it meet the needs of both you and your pet. Same with the cushions, making sure that you've got a variety of pattern, texture. Pattern's way more forgiving than a solid colour. So it might be that you want a fleck or some sort of pattern on your cushions or your sofa covers or your rugs, because that's going to be much more forgiving than having a solid colour.
And I guess the animal behaviorist of me is thinking, what about those dogs or cats that are going to scratch the sofas or eat those cushions? And I think that's where having really good management in place, isn't it, within the design, how you zone to prevent access if that's going to be a problem, but also get the support you need to overcome those sort of challenges, isn't it? Can you give me any examples of some of the innovative design solutions or features you yourself have incorporated for a client in your projects where they've got pets and they want to, I don't know, whether it's incorporate a bed within a certain structure within the kitchen or something. Can you give us some examples?
Yeah, so there are some things that you can purchase or you can make. So Instagram, Etsy, Pinterest, they're absolutely full of ideas of things that could be made or bought, DIY projects or things that could actually be adapted that you perhaps already own. But I've had a client with a cabinet, so they were crate training their puppy, and they knew that they were going to continue to crate train them. So they used a cabinet, and the bottom of the cabinet, they put a mesh in instead. So that became the crate for the puppy, but the cabinet was actually attractive at the top. Another thing that you can do with crates is potentially putting some sort of shelf up above it. Obviously, this is if you know you're going to continue to use it rather than sort of short-term thing, but putting a shelf and then putting plants up above that, making sure that they're non-toxic plants and they're not going to be attracting the cat or the puppy or whatever it is. But then also, I have another client. She is actually designing her kitchen. So she's got a fairly new kitchen, but she's going to get a carpenter to add into the end of her island a crate for her dog. And that's going to be sort of built in within the structure of the kitchen. So that's another way of building it in.
Yeah, fabulous.
And then cats as well, even sort of secondhand furniture that you can buy, sort of a table that you can adapt by putting something cozy underneath, you know, on the little shelf. It's always the case of being sure that your pet's going to use it though.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a good point, because for cats especially, they like high up and they like secure enclosed places, those hiding spots. So, you know, there's some great examples you were mentioned on some of the websites earlier, Etsy, and you mentioned IKEA. But actually, if we think about cats specifically being sort of semi-aerial species, we can dramatically increase their territory without disrupting the ground, because you know, we're ground dwellers, it's us humans. So, you know, we can create some functional, yet really aesthetically pleasing designs through clever shelving designs and use of real woods as kind of pillars integrating within shelves. So,
and
you know,
scratch posts within the
that's
walls and things like that.
quick wins within clients' homes where they've been working with somebody like yourself, and the dog's bed, it doesn't have to be a crate with the mesh, it can be just all open, but it's instead of the wine fridge, it's the dog's bed that's within the island, and that's great. And dogs like to be quite high up, which is why camp beds can be quite popular as well. So these are really good ideas for somebody who might also need to be quite conservative with the space as well, while we're thinking about welfare and the needs of the animals, as well as balancing the demands that you get from your client. One of the things that is a worrying trend that I've seen in recent years is some of the designs of tanks, for example, like fish tanks. And one especially is these tiny little bubbles that are being sold to put your goldfish in and stick on a glass wall or around your workstation, and things like that. And they're absolutely minuscule and really inhumane. So I just wondered, you know, there are some bizarre kind of trends out there which are purported to be for animal lovers, but yet, you know, harmful and inhumane, to say the least. So what's your thoughts on this whole kind of idea of these bizarre trends and promoting this aesthetic appeal, but not necessarily having that well-being there?
I would never condone something that isn't in the best interest of the animal. I mean, the whole point is that you want to be living harmoniously and happily with your pets in your home. And yes, if it's important to you, then you want your interior design to be looking good. You want a certain aesthetic, you want a certain style, but not to the detriment of the people that are living there or the animals that are living there. So I think it's really important to do your research and make sure that it is appropriate. If you see something online that you think, oh, that's a great idea, I love the way that looks, is it the right size, does it have enough ventilation? And if you're not sure, I mean, there are reviews, but they're not necessarily always authentic, but checking with somebody who's an expert like yourself to be sure and just before you invest in something that's potentially not the right thing and like you say is inhumane.
Yeah, and I think that point about kind of that collaborative working approach is really important, because if I think about the range of behavioral problems that I work with across species, very often it can be the structural design of the home or how the interior is being presented that can actually exacerbate some of the problems. So, for example, I know you I want to talk about flooring type and fabrics or materials of flooring, because one of the most common things I see is dogs that are presenting with different types of anxiety related behaviours. Actually, the flooring type in which they frequent might be quite shiny, be it a particular tile or laminate flooring. And let's say there's a sudden sound that happens and they can't get that good grip. It's like they're wearing roller skates on ice, and that can make them really panicky and actually can increase anxiety related behaviours. And another example I see a lot, and that's really boomed in recent years with bifold doors and more of a lean towards glass as primarily replacing walls or shiny materials within the home. The amount of visual stimuli that then has for those animals, being seeing passers-by or wildlife, that can drive frustration, drive sort of territorial guarding, therefore lead to things that really annoy the client, which is excessive, frequent vocalizations. Or conversely, it might be that the light with the glass and the surfaces are creating shadows or particular light reflecting on walls and floorings, and so the animals are now chasing these shadows and lights, which is causing a problem to the owner. So how do you kind of accommodate that? Do you work with sort of the client and sort of ask questions about their animals and typical behaviors and kind of highlight risks, or how do you go about it?
So the first questions that I always ask with new clients is who lives in the house, and includes pets. So you need to know who lives there and how they live there, what people's routines are, and how people flow around the house. So that's really important. And then asking about the different behaviours of the pets and the people, but also sort of then looking at what, you know, have they got bifold doors? Are pets going to be running in and out? Have they got a cream carpet by the front door? You know, what is it that's going to work and what isn't going to work? And also, I mentioned rugs earlier, but having different zones within the home. I mean, my puppy absolutely loves sitting on our cream rug, which I'm going to advise against in a minute. But yeah, you know, she loves that, and I don't mind. It's an inexpensive old rug, and that's about what I'm willing to accept and what she's doing. You know, I'm not going to tell her she can't go on the rug. I'm perfectly happy for her to be there. But there are choices that you can make. So in terms of the different floorings, hardwood is good, but prone to scratches. But if you go for a more distressed finish, then that can hide the scratches. And then, I mean, the harder floors are easier to maintain. So I think a lot of people do tend to choose the harder floors. But then you can go for different finishes. If you're going for a tile, that can be slippy and cold.
Yeah.
Whereas an LVT might have a little bit more grip to it, depending on the sort of finish on it. And then with the rugs, you can make choices about washable rugs. There are plenty of those on the market these days, going for more of a flat weave rather than a thicker pile. If it's got loops, carpets and rugs with loops are more prone to scratches and to being the wear and tear that sort of scratching might cause. So there's lots of choices within those, and you hopefully won't be buying your floor and then your new pet at the same time. So you'll get to know your pet. I mean, you don't really want to make massive sort of life choices before your pet comes, because you don't know what you're going to get. I've got a client with some beautiful Bengal cats, and they tend to love to be up high. One of them loves to sit on the cooker top and the other one never climbs high. So you'd be quite disappointed if you, for the one that never climbs high, you've bought something that's to go up the wall and, you know, she doesn't want to go on it.
Yeah.
So
And
it's a getting to know your pet.
Exactly, and those things can be vastly expensive. So shelling that out, that's for it not to be used, is pretty gutting for the client. And you know, there are ways we can encourage through, you know, certain feeding regimes in and around and on those areas. But at the end of the day, that they're going to decide where their preference is, like the white rug for your lovely dog too. So you know, if we think about that, you were saying key questions are who lives there, and that includes their animals. And we know that we are a nation of animal lovers, and they want their animal to be in and around them, whether that's the snug or anything like that. How do you approach then personalization for that client and their animals, and kind of customize within the design maybe the owners and their pet's personality and type? You know, would that be through wallpaper or something like that? You know, if they want to kind of honor their pets, how do you kind of make it specific to them?
I would, now bear with me on this one, I would look at the colours, and that includes the colour of the pet.
Okay. Yeah.
In terms of practicality,
Yeah.
actually choosing the colours alongside your pet makes a certain amount of sense. So if, for example, you've got bright yellow curtains and you've got a black cat that loves to rub against the velvet of the yellow curtain, it's going to drive you crackers very
Yeah,
quickly.
exactly. Yeah.
Whereas if you've got that black cat and actually you bring some black into the scheme, then you might go with a black flecked rug, which is going to work better, or a more woven curtain, so that actually that doesn't entirely disguise. We're not trying to make, we're going to keep our homes clean as well, but they're just going to help to disguise and help with the longevity of those sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, if somebody particularly loves, you know, bold wallpaper, it could be that pet is brought into that sort of bold wallpaper. I don't mean their actual pet, but you know, a dog motif on a wallpaper or something like that. If that's the look that they're going for, it could just be simply, you know, a nod towards it in a cushion or something like that.
Mm-hmm. So have you ever come across like a wacky design idea? You know, for example, I've got a huge, almost sort of like 1800 something type portrait, but it's of a dog dressed in a military uniform and looks rather grand as an oil painting on the top of my stairs, which fits there. And it's a nod to my other half, who's military, and a nod to our love of hounds. So have you ever come across a client sort of asking for support to do something that's far wackier than just simply having a gigantic oil painting of a dog?
The closest I got was a client a couple of years ago who when they were trying to it wasn't to do with pets, they were trying to describe their design aesthetic, and they suddenly hit upon, they said, have you seen the film Stuart Little? And he said that's the sort of look that we want, you know, really bold and bright, but it wasn't actually to do with their pet.
Yeah, it was more that aesthetic. Yeah, get it, excellent. And while we sat here, I'm now kind of thinking, oh, what does Becky think of my office? Because I'm hugely biophilic. I like to be surrounded by nature and animals, and I suddenly realized ahead of our conversation that pretty much every part of my house involves images or wallpaper or something with animals and nature on it. So I guess we just naturally surround ourselves with things that make us feel better without necessarily realizing it, that it is all about whatever we lean towards, isn't it?
That's part of the getting to know your client. So getting to know your client and finding out what makes their heart sing, because you want somebody to come home, and when we talked about, you know, your home being a sanctuary, you want them to come home and breathe a sigh of relief and be happy to be there. And that means surrounding yourself with the things that you love, and textures and the finishes that you love. So you will lean towards something and not even necessarily realize it. But in terms of colors and things like that, we talk a lot about what colors are you drawn towards, often looking at people's wardrobes, because that can be a good indicator of the sorts of colors that they like. But then also what sort of textures, which fabrics do you like, and all of those sort of play into building a bigger picture. And then we look at actual images, you know, sharing images between us of the different sorts of things that people like. And all the time, if there is a pet involved, then that comes into play as well.
Cool. Can I just ask, I'm throwing this one at you, what sort of trends are we seeing now coming? We're heading towards autumn winter 24, and then it soon be 25, and spring summer's already being looked at. What are you seeing as the current trends, just generally sort of stepping away now from pets specifically? Anything that we should be aware of?
Green is still very, very popular. Plants within homes, which you need to be very careful with pets.
Yes.
Double checking. I mean, even online, you know, it will say that some plants are safe for pets, but actually sometimes they will be toxic, and they're quite a draw for the little dogs and cats. But also lots of earthy colours are coming in. Quite a lot of calm neutrals, but also browns and sort of terracottas.
Yeah, that's a really good tip about the plants, because it extends to artificial as well. You know, so many a puppy client has bemoaned to me about their pet excavating plants when they've got
So higher pots, I
Yeah.
recommend higher pots, really sturdy pots. I've got one that's on a very tall planter, but it's behind where the crate is. So actually my puppy can't get to that. So just giving it that thought. Not, I mean, when she first came, they were in very strange places up on tables and looked slightly odd, but you know, she's now got used to them and actually it's okay. But just thinking about, well, I still want that plant there. So could it go up on a shelf, or, you know, how can you just make those little tweaks so you're not completely destroying the aesthetic of the house that you loved just to welcome in your new pet.
And just circling back to the idea about the welfare and things like that, one of the things that I'm sure you see a lot when you're in clients' homes who have cats, you mentioned like the Bengals, for example, where they may be primarily inside the home, reduced access to toileting outside. I'm seeing lots of robotic cat litter trays that seem to be sort of on trend increasingly over the years. However, the fallout behaviorally is these can freak out a lot of cats, and given a preference, so we give them a choice of open trays, large trays, closed trays, motorized. Given a preference, these cats often pick the open tray, which is pretty ugly with all the litter exposed, much to the upset of the clients. So you know, I think the key takeaway from here is that, you know, interior designers like yourself, best practice, you are asking your clients about the pets and getting to them and understanding what their habits are, likes and dislikes, but also being mindful that what we want might not always be the best for the cat, the dog, or the fish, whatever it is.
So where can you put that open litter tray that's going to be the least offensive, shall we say, within the home, rather than buying something that's actually going to frighten the cat?
And a really good example of that was a recent case where actually we compromised and had it in a guest bathroom, which wasn't very often utilized, so it was quiet, and actually it reduced down with improved cleaning regimes as well, and different litter types and bigger boxes. Their cats, we got reduction of defecation on the sofa, which was very problematic in a gaming room, which was often frequented.
Compromise is key. You know, we don't welcome small children and pets into our houses without being willing to compromise. And nobody's house is pitch perfect. Yes, people might see it on Instagram, etc., but actually it can't be pitch perfect. It's not going to be a warm and welcoming home if it is exactly like, you know, and you're expecting perfection all the time. So, you know, you do everything that you can to make it as welcoming and as aesthetically pleasing for yourself as you can, and for your pets and so on. But yeah, it won't always be perfect.
Yeah, brilliant. Very good tips, Sarah. Next time I see a white cat in a client's white house, I won't think that they've deliberately got that particular colour cat. It might be that they were advised to go for those colours because of the cat. So, Becky, how can people find out more about your work and see examples and perhaps get in touch? Where's the best way to get in touch with you?
So my website is www.weaveinteriors.co.uk, and my Instagram, I was just trying to check because I've actually just changed it. It's weave.interiordesign is my Instagram handle. So either of those, but if you go on my website, I've got a contact me page, and I think my phone number is also on there as well. Amazing. So if anyone wants to get in touch. I've also written a blog about pets and interior design, which is on my website.
Great. So what I'll do, I'll make sure that we pinpoint that for everyone who's interested to learn more or who wants to get in touch with you. But for now, thank you so much for giving up some of your precious time to talk to me about pets and interior design. Take care.
Thank you, Hannah. Take care. Bye-bye.